Hello and welcome back to NHB Retro. Today we're out in the garage and we're going to take a stab at repairing this TRS-80 Model III computer. Some of you may recall that I've previously featured a TRS-80 Model III on my channel, which completely thwarted my attempts to repair it by just working. This machine was kind of similar. It basically just worked until I heard some crackling and popping, and of course the smoke came out the top, signifying, I believe, that the either one or two Riffa caps that are in the power supply here have departed this world and need to be replaced. So that's what we're gonna do today. Let's take a quick look at the machine first. It appears to be a well-used machine. It has this sort of anti-glare shield attached to the front, which I've seen on several of these machines. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to take that off. Keyboard's in good shape. There's some signage left behind by a previous owner. Fairly interesting. It has some of the usual paint deficiencies that these TRS-80s of this generation commonly have, especially if they got used. And it has a few minor dings and dents, as you can see. That's probably the worst of it there. Otherwise, it appears to be in really good shape. I've had some issues with the disk drives, which I will probably do a separate video about if I end up addressing that. I have an upgrade planned for this machine in any case that will deal with at least one of the disk drives and should leave us with a more functional machine. But first, let's get this thing apart and we will look at getting those Riffa caps out of there and replaced. Okay, so the drill for working on these machines, they're kind of big and bulky, difficult to move around, and because they're all integrated, they're heavy, and there's a lot of components inside. What you want to do basically is flip it on its side, remove all the screws from the bottom. There are quite a number of them, and they're in at least 3, maybe 4 different sizes. So you want to keep those straight, and then flip it back up upright and lift the whole thing off. Now the real trick here, and one of the things that makes me a little bit reluctant to usually pull these things apart unless they need it, is that the CRT is connected to the top case. So it comes off with that. Everything else is connected to the bottom case. Now, in addition to having an exposed CRT that you're working around, which of course can be extremely dangerous, and you shouldn't do it unless you are familiar with how to avoid electrocuting yourself. Even when unplugged, such monitors can hold thousands of volts of electricity that they can discharge into you in the blink of an eye. But also, because this CRT is attached to the top, and such things are innately fragile, being made out of glass, it is very easy to break the neck off the tube. So you want to be very, very careful of that. I'm going to try to be mindful of all those things. Let's get it flipped over, let's get the screws out, and pop the top off. Okay, with all the screws removed, now we need to lift straight up, being careful not to snag anything, keeping in mind that there are two different sets of cables that go from the bottom portion to the CRT portion on the top that are still connected. So straight up, don't rip anything off. That's the basic drill. And we're going to put it on its side right next to it, because otherwise those cables are too short. Okay, the computer is now apart, and let me tell you, it does not smell nice inside there. I can already see several Riffa caps just from standing here. I believe this is there are two Aztec branded power supplies in here. There is this one that is the power supply for the disk drives, and there's this one that is the power supply, I believe, for the main computer motherboard, which is all encased in this chassis down here still. So I'll bring in for a closer look, and then we'll see about pulling those out. All right, here's a close-up view of the two power supplies in question. Now, of course, you can see a Riffa cap right there, and that doesn't appear to have blown. And there's one more on this other power supply back here, which maybe is the one that blew up, and I think there's a potential, depending on the model, for there to be a second Riffa back here on the second power supply. It looks like we're going to have to take the whole drive cage mechanism out to get to that second power supply. Probably that's just a matter of pulling those screws off the bottom. Let's go ahead and do that, and we'll get a closer look. Here's a little bit better shot of that first power supply. This is the one from the side of the drive cage. Right over there. This is the one that actually powers the disk drives. And that Riffa looks pretty toasted. So yeah, obviously candidate number one. Let's go ahead and actually replace that one, and then we'll work on getting that second power supply out of there. Okay, and here we have the second power supply pulled out. It's very, very similar to the first one. It has a Riffa that also seems to have expired. Incidentally, here's the entire chassis all disassembled. Found a few interesting things. Those are two of the three broken louver pieces from the case. So that's nice. And I also found a piece of serial number information off of something, I don't know where from. It seems like it has some French in there, so not sure what that was originally part of. But yeah, let's go ahead and get both of these power supplies back into working order. Okay, I've got the computer reassembled, and now and of course the power supplies have been recapped, or at least the Riffa caps have been replaced. The electrolytics that are on both of those are pretty high quality, name brand. None of them look like they're bulging or anything. So hopefully it was just the Riffas, and we'll give it a shot. But now we come to the phase that is common to all TRS-80 Model III repairs, which is it's back together. I think it works, but I don't want to go through the entire hassle of putting the case back together until I know it works. And so at this point, we're going to power it up sideways. I'm going to try to, well, at least with the monitor sideways. I'm going to try to move you in for a shot. It's just going to boot up, hopefully. Let's do that. Okay, and this position is admittedly fairly awkward. Let's see, I've got a games disc in here. Let's go ahead and just flip the switch. Should just boot into new DOS. And there we go. Aha, okay, so yeah, much less smoky than it was last time. Let's get the computer all put back together, and then we'll talk more about some future upgrades I have in mind. And there we have it, the TRS-80 Model III back up and working. It still smells a little bit of smoke, but not nearly as bad as it did last night when it was sitting on my couch and started making fireworks. Anyway, these are really fun machines. You know, I previously, when I had thought about these machines, they always just seemed big and clunky and, you know, not that sleek, not that interesting. But once you've actually experienced these machines in person, there's a certain like physical presence to them that's very impressive. And you know, you can tell this is a machine that was made way before any sort of race to the bottom happened with personal computers. This is a machine it was expensive, it's big and heavy, and that's just the way it was. Anyway, very fun machines. I've had super good luck with them. This is my second one that I've I guess repaired. The other one really didn't require any repairs. I thought I was going to get to a point where I was going to do some upgrades to this machine in this video. However, this video is already long enough, and the upgrades are things that I had to order. So once those get here, we'll talk more about that. They have to do with replacing the disk drives, by the way, and I'll get more into that in the following videos. The disk drives in this were an interesting thing. Luckily, they seem to be very compatible with Tandon TM100 style drives, and the drives that came with this machine, they're odd. They look like they were repaired by someone at some point. Yeah, and again, I'll go in more detail into that when I get around to making that video. But for now, very pleased that the TRS-80 Model III is working, and hopefully you enjoyed coming along for the ride, and I will catch you on the next one.